that's really interesting that the data is indicating that it's actually worse than the anecdote, because usually when someone wants to dismiss the things that activists report, they say, oh, that's just anecdotal. The idea
Right.
being that, well, you guys have all these stories, but surely it can't be that bad. And it sounds like what you discovered is that it's worse. So
It is worse.
what
Yeah.
is what were the results of that survey, and what exactly does that mean?
So our survey was to determine, we surveyed moms of boys born in the past 4 years. And we asked them if during their pregnancy or after, when they were in the hospital or shortly after the birth, they were asked if they wanted to circumcise their sons. And we found that 94% of moms were asked at least once, and the average number of asks that they reported was 8 times. That went in from prenatally. We had an anecdote of a mom who, on her 17-week sonogram, found the fetus was male, and they asked her and indicated on the sonogram form that she wanted a circumcision for this as yet unborn child. And then we did not get enough information about where each of these solicitations took place, and we're going to be doing a further investigation of that, but that the average again was 8 times. And then we had a section at the end for open responses, for people to write in what they, and this was a Qualtrics survey, which is a highly respected surveying firm. It was a randomized nationwide survey. We picked, I believe, 13 states rather than doing all 50 states, because we wanted a significant enough number from each of the states. So we picked states in each of the 4 census regions of the country. And so we had, I don't have the states in front of me, but among the states we did was Washington, California, New York, Florida, Massachusetts, Colorado, Illinois, Missouri. I'm just not recalling all the states here, but Texas, of course. Large states and states that were geographically dispersed, and didn't find a tremendous difference among the states in the amount of solicitation. There was some. When we looked further, we found a significant difference in racial and ethnic data. So Latina women were solicited more than white women, and Black women were solicited more than white women. And we, so that's the one part, that there was 94% were solicited. We also asked the mothers, if you had not been asked, would you have brought up circumcision? Would you have requested it? And more than 40% said they would have, which is kind of sad, right? But what's more horrifying is that nearly 80% said that after being asked, they agreed to it. So when we extrapolated, when we calculated what that meant, we calculated a circumcision rate of about 75%. And that is more than the figure that's been tossed around now for years. And it also shows that when we say the circumcision rate is going down, we really didn't have the evidence of that. So, first I see this, and we were very careful in analyzing the results. We had the help of a statistician, and we went over it very carefully. The survey was very carefully designed, and my first reaction was to despair, and then I pretty quickly said, no, it's good for us to know this. So easy when you're doing this work, like you're going to a baby fair and you're talking to moms, some few people come up to you and tell you how great it is what you're doing. And that's not unimportant. That's really inspiring for the activist. But it's easy to then believe that, you know, you're making a difference in the overall rate of circumcision. You did save that mom's baby, and that's really important. And you might have saved, that mom might have saved her friend's baby. But in terms of the massive scope of this problem, we're not making a dent. And it's good for us to know that, because that means our strategy has to change. And that's what we are in the process of figuring out. Intact America, and a lot of this is talked about on our website, intactamerica.org. So I encourage your listeners to look at
We
our
can put the
website.
survey in the show notes at the end of the episode.
That'd be great. We'll do that. We'll put the press release and the report. The raw survey is, you know, and the data is hundreds of pages long, which, by the way, we would make available to researchers if they want. We're not trying to hide any of this. We're trying to responsibly disseminate it. So it's just really important for us all to understand that what the problem is. The problem is, this thing is, you know, this is the big tobacco of this human rights issue. And to talk about, you know, educating the moms, which is what everyone's first advice is. You know, the doctors tell us, oh, you got to go to the moms. PR people say, oh, you know, you got to have a parent education. It'd be like, it's like educating, you know, the 12-year-olds about vaping. You got to stop the people who are selling, because you can't, it's sort of a blame the victim or blame the target, let alone the baby being the victim. So it's really, really important for us to recognize that the reason this thing continues is because there's a vested interest on the part of the medical establishment in selling it. And there are different reasons why they have a vested interest in selling it. It's not just because individual doctors make money off of it. That's part of it. But this is much bigger than that, and much more pervasive, much more. So the incentives, the financial incentives are important, but the sort of psychic environment of circumcision is just as, if not more, toxic, pervasive, and essential for us to address.
So I want to get to what changes in strategy or ways of creating change this survey implies. But before that, I want to ask some questions about the data itself, because
Sure.
there's a saying that any change requires first seeing reality as it is and being grounded in it. It sounds like that this survey has really helped you and the other activists you work with do that. So if I heard correctly, 40% of parents said they were going to circumcise anyway, but that 80% chose to circumcise after being
About
asked.
78, right? About 78% chose to circumcise.
So it sounds like solicitation nearly doubled.
170. My
Fails.
initial numbers might be a little bit off. It was a couple of percentage points more than 40, and it was a couple of percentage points less than 80. But the calculation was a 173% change in the circumcision rate due to solicitation.
And 8 solicitations being average, which
Yes.
I remember when I was growing up in the church, I heard that someone had to hear the gospel 50 times before they converted. So
Right.
that sounds like you're nearly a fifth of the way to actually completely changing someone's religion with that many
Right.
solicitations.
Well, actually, what was interesting was it didn't take 8 to change people's minds. Even one solicitation made a huge difference, because it carried with it pressure, the notion of medical approval. And the sellers were doctors, nurses, and nurse midwives, all of them. Doctors more, nurses somewhat less than doctors, but midwives somewhat less than that. There are fewer of them also. That was numerical, right? So those were the sellers. So it didn't take much to get parents to say, oh, okay. So our position is even the presence of a consent form in the package of, registration materials or in the OB's office prior to birth is a solicitation. And I know there's a lot of resistance to seeing that on the part of healthcare professionals. Like, well, we have to have the consent form but in countries that don't circumcise, they don't have a consent form in the packet. They don't tell anyone, oh, you got to educate the parents. The parents have to understand about the foreskin. Well, no, they don't. None of that is true, except that we have this circumcising culture, and we have been told that it's our fault, the consumer's fault for this culture, right? That if only parents knew more, if they understood more, even the admonitions that activists give to parents, do your research. It's like in France, they don't have to do any research. They research on what? Do we do research on, fingertip removal or routine appendectomies? No, this is a medically useless and unnecessary procedure. Why should anyone anticipate that something like this is going to be pushed on them? And if they fail to do their research, then they're somehow at fault. No.
Thank you for listening to the Brendon Marotta Show. If you liked this episode, please share it with someone else who would also like it, and then go on whatever platform you listen to the show on and leave a positive review. If you want to support the show directly, go to brendonmarotta.com/show and subscribe there. Paid subscribers get special unreleased bonus material and live events that are only available to them. Once again, that is brendonmarotta.com/show. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you all later.